Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillahi wa kafa, wa salamun ala ibadihi allazina istafa amma ba'd. Fa'auzu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Wa iza sa'alaka ibadi anni fa inni qareeb. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun. Wa salamun ala al-mursaleen. Walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Allahumma salli ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala ali sayyidina Muhammad wa barik wa sallim. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم. ربي يسر ولا تؤسر وتمم بالخير وبك نستعين. ربي زدني علما يا فتاح يا فتاح يا فتاح. Alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ka karam. Blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we are here, safe, sound, in the comfort of our homes, with no fear of anything outrageous about to happen in our neighborhood, not fearing for any of our children, our families, feeling secure in our workplaces. It's a blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Safety, aman, is one of the biggest blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you are living in a place that is safe and secure, that is truly a blessing to reckon with. And Alhamdulillah, the place that we live in is not just a safe from a geopolitical perspective, but even from a living perspective is a very, very safe and sound place. And one of the things that we should be thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we should be thankful to those who manage this place as well, because indeed without thanking people there is no thanking the Rabb. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Rasulullah said that the one who is not grateful to the people is not grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because there is no count that we can do of the blessings Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had said. And that is why Allah himself has said that in ta'uddu ni'matallahi la tuhsuha, that if you are to count my blessings you would still not be able to count them. Allah ki hum pe itni नेमते हैं कि अगर हम उनका हिसाब भी लगाना चाहें तो we will not be able to count them. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would have not given us this eyesight, we would have been blind. If he would have not given us the power to hear, we would have been deaf. If he would have not given us the ability to move, we would have been stuck in our places. If he would have not given us the ability to digest, we would have not been able to eat. If he would have not given us a place to live, we would have been without home. If he would have not given us a place to work, we would have been jobless. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would have not been given us Īmān, we would have been a kafir. From smallest of things and then within our body to the greatest of things, we are overwhelmed by his blessings. And there is no count that we can do for his blessings that he has given to us. The fact that we get to relieve ourselves and take out whatever we put into our system in the form of feces, that in itself is one of the biggest blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. My mother-in-law, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive her and raise her status, when she fell ill, one of the things that she had was that she had severe constipation. And because of that constipation, she started developing gases, and her nitrogen levels in her blood increased to such extent that she could not keep her senses. She could not keep her senses. Imagine that the fact that we are able to relieve ourselves is a blessing, that if even that system gets blocked, we will not be ourselves anymore. That is why there is one dua which is specifically for that. Once you get relieved, you make that dua. So there's dua in entering in the toilet and coming out of the toilet, but there's one dua that you read when you get, relieve yourself, and then, there's dua for that as well.
Alhamdulillah allazi azhaba anil aza wa afani.
That I am grateful to the person who got this thing relieved from me and has done afiyat with me. There was a person in Bani Israel. He was a great abid. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him the tawfiq to do ibadat of Allah for 400 years or 200 years, I can't recall exactly, but for multiple hundreds of years, he did ibadat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He did extensive sujood to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, prayed a lot to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it comes in hadith that when he would be presented to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he would be said that by the rahmat of Allah, you are granted place in Jannah. So he would say that not out of rahmat, but out of insaf, out of the justice, fairness, I want to be granted Jannah. Because he was confident that he has done so much that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would invariably say that this is, a person who should go to Jannah. So he said that out of the blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, out of the rahmat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you have been granted a place in Jannah. And he said, no, I want to be granted a place in Jannah out of the insaf of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the justice of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he said, okay, let's do just this. He said, okay, now put all the worship that he has done on one side, and the blessing of this eyelids, just the blessing of the eyelid, and on the other side of the scale. And as soon as the eyelid, just the blessing of the eyelid was put on the other side of the scale, it became heavier than the worships of 400 years. And it was said that the justice says that he is not worthy of going because he has not thanked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala enough for this one blessing that has been given to him. And then he would say, Ya Allah, out of your rahmat, please, out of your rahmat. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's blessings are, we can't count them. And we all would be asked about the blessings that we have been given. Once Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam came out at night and he saw that in that odd hour of the night he came across Abu Bakr Siddiq. So he was a bit surprised at what is Abu Bakr Siddiq radhiyallahu ta'ala anhu doing out at this hour. And while they were still greeting each other, they came across Umar radhiyallahu ta'ala anhu as well. And so they were all surprised at what all three of them are doing out on the street at this time of the night. So Rasulullah said that, he lifted his shirt and he had a stone tied to his stomach. And he said, I was feeling very hungry, so I just came out. So the two of them, the two Sahaba radhiyallahu ta'ala, they also said that same is the case with us. The hunger brought us out. So Rasulullah said, let's go to another Sahabi's place. They went to that Sahabi's place, and long story short, the Sahabi, was very pleased with them coming. He slaughtered a goat and cooked it for them, and he brought dates, and then he brought fresh milk, and then he brought the goat meat. Rasulullah said to Abu Bakr Siddiq and Umar radiyallahu ta'ala anhu that these are the ni'mats on which you would be questioned. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that you would be questioned on all the ni'mats. Everyone would be questioned on the ni'mats that he has been given. And as soon as they heard, they started crying. This is when they are so hungry that they have stones tied to their bellies, but when they realize that it's a blessing, and it's a blessing that had come from Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala got this arranged for them, but the realization that, we have to go and answer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala just, stuck with them. I didn't intend to talk about any of this, but just before we started talking, I got a news that just triggered all of this thought in my mind. We were talking about dua as a discussion earlier, and I wanted to conclude that topic today. But these are also duas. Thanking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a form of a dua, and given that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us so much even without us asking, we can imagine that how much more we can get if we really turn to Allah and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and we seek from Him, how much more He would be willing to give to us. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala Himself is saying that, I answer to the call of the one who calls on me, right? He is giving us the command to ask me, I will respond to you. He's telling us, ask me, I will respond to you. What are you waiting for? What is it that is holding you back? مَا غَرَّكَ بِرَبِّكَ الْكَرِيمِ. Come and ask me. I am here to give to you. I want to give to you. So why are you not asking? So we should ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we learned that when we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we should not have any doubt in our mind. We should not think that when I am going to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it will not come through. Because if you're going to express doubt at that point in time, it would mean that we are not believing in this fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself is telling us that ask, ask, ask. Right? So this is not having yaqeen in what the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had said, قَالَ رَبُّكُمْ ud'uni astajib lakum. Ask me and I will reply to you. Ask me and I will respond to you. So there shouldn't be any doubt in our minds when we are asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. No matter, and I just want to recap some very key points from the last two lectures so that they stick with us and they stay with us. One of those points is that how do we differentiate that my du'as are not getting accepted because there is something wrong with me, or that my du'a is just being stored for akhirah and it would be accepted over there, or it is cancelling out some after that is coming my way. If you are getting the tawfiq to make dua over and over and over again, that means that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is listening to you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is enjoying the fact that you are, or is pleased, the right way to say it, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is pleased with the fact that you are making dua, and He's wanting you to make dua again and again. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to hear you, wants to listen to you calling Him, and He is asking you to make dua over and over again. So if after making dua for a day or two, you stop making dua because shaitan has put this thought in your mind, but you make the dua, suni nahi ja rahi, Allah is not listening to my dua, then know that there is something wrong somewhere else. And this is a symptom of a bigger disease that is residing elsewhere, which has resulted in this happening. We also spoke about the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has assured us that there is nobody in between, there is no hijab between Allah and His abd. We don't need mediums and interfaces for us to go out and call on to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The first and the foremost point of contact is a direct point of contact between abd and his Rabb. Yes, as a supplementary thing, you can use other means. For example, you can count on your parents making dua for you, because the duas of your parents are accepted. You can ask, you can hope that your teachers are making dua for you. Somebody is going to a place, you can ask them to be making dua for you. Asking others to make dua for you, be they your parents, your teachers, your friends, it's always a good thing. But it's not that you only count on them making a dua for you and then hoping that would get through, and you yourself, you don't have to ask because mujhe मेरी तो सुनते ही नहीं है. That mindset should not be there. Another thing which we have discussed offline, but we haven't spoken about it as part of this discussion, is that should we go and give a reference, a wasila? Should we make somebody a wasila in making dua? Somebody, a buzurg, a wali, a sahabi, should we mention them and say that, or should we ask them to make dua for us? Well, the correct thing to do over here is that we can give a reference, or we can use an wali of Allah, or an awliya, or the sulaha, or the sahaba ikram radiyallahu ajma'in as a reference in our dua, such as to say that, Ya Allah, he is a beloved person of yours, and for the love that I have in my heart for him, I ask you to help me in this matter. So you can give a reference of him, but you still ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You can make a reference to him, and if you have visited a grave of some wali, you can say that, Ya Allah, I just did some isale sawab for a person whom you have loved. For if that has been of any value to you, Ya Allah, I ask you for this in return. But whom do you ask? You ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone and nobody else.
What is the correct way to ask for a dua using a reference? Because there is some doubt there as well. What is the correct way to use the reference?
Just as I just explained, that for the love that I have for a person whom you loved, Ya Allah, I ask you for this. Right? Or that, Ya Allah, I just did a salih sawab. If that is of any value in your sight, Ya Allah, please did that. Right? Another way of asking dua is to give Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala a reference to any good deed that you have done in past. And this too is established from hadith, because Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam once told Sahaba Ikram ajma'in about 3 men who were traveling, and suddenly it started raining a lot, so they decided to take refuge in a cave. Once they went in that cave, landslide happened, and one of the rocks fell at the door of the cave, and suddenly the cave was now sealed. So they said that, all right, let us now recall any good deed that we have done, and then ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for that to move the stone if that deed was acceptable to them, right? And the one by one, each of those men, he gave an example. The first man gave an Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that, Ya Allah, once my mother asked me, I had come back home after the whole day, and my parents wanted a glass of milk, and I stood all night holding the glass for them, because by the time I reached with the glass, they had already slept. And then I stood, without meeting my family or anything, I just stood there with the glass of milk, and then after they woke up, I gave it to them. If in your sight that was of any value, the same words that I was using earlier, Ya Allah, please move this stone, allowed our cave to be opened up. And when he did that, the stone moved slightly, but not completely. Then the next one made the dua. He gave the reference of the fact that he had an opportunity to do the zina, but he got reminded of Allah and he did not do zina. So he said that, Ya Allah, I stopped out of my fear for you, and if that was of any value to you, Ya Allah, please open this. And the third one gave an example of that there was somebody who he had done business with, and then that person went away, and later on when he came back, whatever share that was profit he had gained from that business, he gave it all to him. He didn't keep anything, and he said, Ya Allah, if that is of any value to you, please open this. And the stone completely moved and they came out. So this is a perfect example that if we are ever in a situation where, personally, I can't recall any good that I've done so well that I should be worthy of presenting to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but perhaps there is within ourselves, if we really look for that, there's one thing that I've done truly for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we can present to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that, Ya Allah, if that deed of mine which was done purely out of sincerity for you, if it's acceptable for you, Ya Allah, please allow this to happen. So this is one way of asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as well. I was saying that there is no hijab between the person and Rabb, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had said this very clearly that وَإِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِي أَنِّي فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ. I have repeated this in the previous 2 sessions as well, but again, this is one of the fundamental ayahs whose understanding and the conviction of knowing that indeed Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is close to us should be very firm in our heart. And to re-emphasize that, why this ayah is so important, I'll now give examples of, I previously quoted that this is how it has been. I'll give you examples of how it comes. In various places in Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or informed Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that people ask you about so and so, give the response. For example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, يَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الْأَحِلَّةِ, that they ask you about the moon, and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Kul hiya, that Kul hiya mawaqitu linnas, that they are for establishing time for the people, right? So, Kul, and then the answer. Another place Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, يَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الْيَتَامَ, people ask you about the orphans. Kul islahul lahum khair, that there is taking care of them or fixing them or correcting them, there is khair in them, right? يَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الْمَحِيزِ, people ask you about periods, and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Kul huwa azan, there's impurity in it, and so on and so forth. So every time يَسْأَلُونَكَ comes, the response comes, Kul, you give this answer. Over here, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَإِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِي أَنِّي, when the people ask, who people? My abd. There's already possessiveness being established. When my abd asks you about me, there's no kul. There's no kul over here. The response is, فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ, that I am very near. I am very near. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to establish that fact, that how close Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is to the one who is asking, did not even want to get the word kul, that Ya Rasulullah, you say this to them. He wanted to, there's a reason that there is nobody. The connection between a person and his Rabb is direct. And that is a very important thing to understand. That is, we should, when we are asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we should have this conviction in our hearts that Allah is listening to me. Allah is listening to me. It cannot be that I am doubtful about this fact. A couple of more points with regards to this. When we are making dua, we should, now I'm coming to that, what are the things that we can do to make our duas, or show that not only is the application right, but there are supplementary things in that application which would, like if you, I don't know about other places, but over here if you apply for UK visa, they give you an option that if you pay more, you can get on the priority list and they will process your application faster, right? So this is that extra payment that you can do for getting your duas into priority list. So number one is that if you package your dua in durood, so meaning to say that you recite durood on Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you make your dua, and then at the end of your dua, you recite durood again. Because durood on Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is also a dua. And it is not, it cannot really be thought about that we are sending dua for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam for the blessings to be sent on him, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would reject that, because it's a dua for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So if we send the dua, if we start with sending durood on Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and we end on sending durood on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and in between we fit our own list of requests, then it is against the shan of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He accepts the start and the end and rejects whatever is in between. Right? So that is one way to package your duas and get your duas accepted. Another thing, a tried and tested method, is ask for your brother. A dua made by a mu'min for his mu'min brother behind his back is a guaranteed accepted dua. If you make a dua for your brother behind his back, it's guaranteed to be accepted. It is not that that dua will not be accepted for him. So, to a lot of my students who struggle to come onto classes on time, or who are not able to keep up with the course, I give this recommendation to them that make dua for your class fellows, that Ya Allah allow them to complete this course with sincerity, with punctuality, and make this dua make dua for the rest of your class. And because of that barakat of that dua, you would also get the benefit for it. What is the behind the scenes, what's happening? What is happening is that when we make dua for our Muslim brother or sister, and your wife as well, so brother and sister begum ke liye dua nahi kar sakte. It's like when we make for dua for a mu'min or a mu'mina behind his or her back, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks the angels to say Ameen to it. And a dua to which the angels have said Ameen to is almost certain to be accepted. But then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, being Allah, the most generous, He asks the angels to make the same dua for the person who has made that dua. Now, if I make a dua, there's a probability to it. Angels say Ameen, there's a higher probability to it. But if the angels are making dua, it is almost sure shot, done deal. So if you are truly in need of something, make dua for your brother to have the same thing, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give you that thing. And if you think about it, this is such a beautiful concept, and this is the beauty of our deen, that how it ensures that there is love among people as opposed to animosity, as opposed to jealousy. That the beauty of our deen is that when you are asking something that you want yourself for your brother, you cannot be jealous of him having something equal or better than you. Because now you're making dua for that person. You know, हमारा हाल इस तरह है, this is a story that comes to my mind, that there was one person, he was very poor and very struggling. So he said, you know, दुनिया में मेरा तो कुछ बन नहीं रहा, let me just go spend time in zikr. So he cut himself and he just started doing zikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and in complete isolation. And after a while of doing zikr, he reached a stage where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that, oh my, whatever you want, you will get it. So, or, you know, it's like, you know, what is it that you want? Ask me what you want. He said, Ya Allah, you know, just be razi with me, or give me your pleasure. So he said that, you know what, I give you that, I'm razi with you, and whatever you want, you can have that as well. So he sort of, suddenly his lifestyle, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala started giving him a lot. And because in his heart, he was already connected with Allah, so now what he would get, he would spend on people. He would invite his neighbor, who knew that he was a very poor person, suddenly started observing that now there are people coming to his house. Previously, he would be not having anything to eat, and now he's calling 15, 20 people every day, 2-3 meals. You know, दुनिया की बहुत उसके पास चीज़ें आना शुरू हो गई. So he became really curious कि इसने किया क्या है? What is it that he has done that has gotten him to this place? So he started pushing him कि बताओ क्या हुआ है, क्या किया, what did you do? उसने कहा कुछ नहीं यार, बस अल्लाह की रहमत. He said no, I want to know what did you do. कुछ तो है, you know, there's something. So he said, okay, the reality is that I just started doing zikr of Allah, and you know, eventually Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala opened his door of rahmat on me. So he said, okay, I'll do the same. So he went in and he cut himself and he started doing zikr, and he started doing zikr and zikr. And finally he reached that stage as well where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asked that, oh my, tell me what do you want? He said, Ya Allah, I want, वो तो आप मुझे दे ही दें जो आपने उसको दिया है, but वो जो उसको दिया है वो भी खत्म कर दें. वो सिर्फ मेरे पास हो, उसके पास नहीं हो. You know, so our state is that we first want it to be taken from somebody else, and then we want us to have it. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in our deen is teaching us something so beautiful, that if you want something good for yourself and you don't have it, make dua for your brother to have the same thing. Or for example, you like somebody's car, make dua for that person. Ya Allah, preserve him, Allah, give him a better car than this, and you know, get him and save him from anybody's evil eyes, somebody's from jealousy, protect him, make dua for him, and you never know that you may get the same thing yourself.
Like, I think one of the ways to beat the diseases of the heart, of jealousy, is to make dua
For that person. Absolutely. The easiest way of overcoming hasad is to start making dua for that person. When you start making dua for that person, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala removes hasad. So how many tricks have we learned so far? 2 tricks. Number 1, package. Number 2, make dua for the other person, and inshallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give you the same or better. Third thing to keep in mind in making dua, and this is, you know, we say that there are certain people of Allah who are, the word term that's used for them is they are mustajabud dawat, that they raise hands and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala listens to whatever, all their duas are always accepted. Now, it is not that they have gained some superhuman powers. There is this one simple thing that they do, which is कि वो अपने रब की मानना शुरू कर देते हैं, रब उनकी मानना शुरू कर देते हैं. Right? So what we can learn from that, and from this very fact, that if you start listening to Allah, Allah will start listening to you. The third trick is that, and try it sometime yourself to see its effectiveness, is that whenever you have an opportunity to sin, whenever there's an opportunity to sin, at that point in time, hold yourself back, stop yourself from that sin, and right at that moment, make dua. Right at that moment, make dua and say, Ya Allah, for you, I stop myself from this sin. Ya Allah, for your love, I stop myself from this sin, from the tawfiq that you gave me. Not that mere andar koi kamal hai that I stopped it. You allowed me to stop myself. I stopped myself. Ya Allah, I'm in need of this. Please give this to me. And this does not have to be a sin at the scale of that, you're about to skim your company for 2 million dirhams and then you say that maine ye nahi kiya. It is as simple as it is as simple as that you're driving on the road and there's a billboard and you want to look at it, but you lower your eyes and say that, Ya Allah, I don't want to do badnazari. I don't want to look at something that you have asked me not to look at. Or ghibat. Or you have a perfect opportunity to lie and get away with something, but you don't lie. Right? So even the smallest of the sins, where you know you can do it, where there's a great temptation to do it, where there's ease after doing it, or supposed ease after doing it, but you don't do it, that is an opportunity to ask, make dua. That is a time when if you make dua at that time, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will definitely reward you. So 3 things to keep in mind with regards to making the application or fast forwarding the application or fast tracking the application is to package it with the durood, is to ask for your brother what you need for yourself, and number 3, that just make dua after not sinning when you had the opportunity to sin. And then when you are making dua in any of these 3 of times, remember that don't hold yourself. Ask Allah according to the shan of Allah. Do not put limitations that bas itna sa hi de dein ya Allah, main isi pe khush hu. If you don't have a car, ya Allah, alto hi mil jaye. And this is what we do. Because we think that, badi cheez to mushkil hai, choti mil jaye khair hai, main khush ho jaunga. But then you are asking Allah. So ask Allah that, Ya Allah, whatever has most khair in it and which is the best that I am deserving of, Ya Allah, give that to me. Do not dictate, that we have already talked about, but also do not restrict. कि बस इतना ही मिल जाए मैं बहुत खुश हो जाऊंगा. तो शो कि भाई मैं तो बड़ा आसानी से राजी होने वाला बंदा हूँ, जितना मिल जाए उस पर खुश हो जाऊंगा. Don't restrict yourself. Ask Ya Allah, जो सबसे बेहतर चीज़ है और जिसमें मेरे लिए खैर है, वो मुझे दे दे. So ask for khair and ask for the best. बिल्कुल. माँ बाप, उस्ताद, वो तो हम बात कर चुके हैं ना कि इनकी दुआ, पर उसमें भी सबसे ज़्यादा बात यह है कि उनको इतना खुश करें कि वो उनके दिल से ही आपके लिए दुआ निकले. हाँ, बट उसमें somebody asked me this question that my parents, मैं जो भी कुछ कर लूँ, they don't make dua for me. In fact, वो ये कहते हैं कि तुमने ये तो नहीं किया था. So there are 2 aspects to it. We are doing khidmat of our parents not because we want anything in return from them. We are doing khidmat of our parents first and foremost because this is a strict command from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And there is no option. There is no option that one should stop doing khidmat of one's parents if they are not nice to you. That is not an option. No matter how harsh your parents are, no matter how strict they are, no matter how ungrateful they are, you are duty bound to remain respectful and you're duty bound to remain in their khidmat as long as they are alive. Now, how do we overcome this thing? That, we are humans. We want some reciprocation, we want some appreciation, we want some acknowledgement. Otherwise, things becomes too dry. The best way to console yourself and to regain your energies is to always reflect that, am I getting the tawfiq to do anything good? Because if you are doing a neki, if you're doing a good deed, that's always by tawfiq of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And doing the khidmat of our parents against all odds is also a huge blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if you are getting the consistency in doing that, that means that if nobody is happy with you, it doesn't matter because Allah is very pleased with you. That's number 1. That I'm getting the tawfiq to do this means that Allah is pleased with me. And the second thing is that now when you're doing it, you're going to get 2 rewards for it. First reward is for the khidmat of your parents, and the second reward is for the sabr. And the sabr, the reward for that is, there's no account for that. It's behisab. Sabr ka badla behisab hai. Beghairin hisab. Absolutely, there's nobody can come and say that this is how much you would get. Right? Some words of hadith I can't recall exactly, but they are on the lines of that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would ask that who are the people who are Muslim, stand up, and the Muslim would stand up, and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would start. Muslim is somebody who's oppressed, who is deprived of his rights. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will start giving them, will start giving them, will start giving them. The people who had their rights in this dunya, they would wish that they would get scissors and they'll cut their hands and they'll become Muslim so that they start getting as much as these people are getting. So sabr is there. And the third thing that you should keep in mind, if you are doing something against which you're not getting respond or acknowledgement in this dunya or from the people whom you're doing it for, is that what Sahaba were used to do. Sahaba radiyallahu ta'ala ajma'in, they would be very, very, very worried if they have done something and the reward of it came through. Because they would be worried that what if now that I've been rewarded for it, this is all the reward there is for it and there's nothing left for me in the akhirah. The best of the investment bankers or the investors were the Sahaba Ikram radiyallahu ta'ala ajma'in, because they knew exactly where to deposit their investments. उनको इस बात का यकीन हो चुका था that इस दुनिया में कोई investment का फ़ायदा नहीं है. The investment is in akhirah. And this is one thing that we need to develop. I'll spend some 5 minutes on this topic because it's a very, very important thing. One of the things that Dajjāl would do when he comes, and because again we are living in a time where these fitnas would roll out like a fireball. They will just start consuming us, and if you're not prepared for it, we will not know how to manage it. One of the ways Dajjāl would get to us is through materialism. And the dunya would become so important. The worldly life would have such high values that if we would be, or everybody would start or would become, people would be willing to trade their Īmān for dunya because they would feel that if we don't do it, we will be left behind. We would lose out. We would become a lesser. We will be a loser. We would be a second-grade citizen. We would be somebody who is, behukoof, jahil, backward, fundamental, all these terms that we hear being used, they would be used to make you feel that the logic is saying that we should do this because this is such a logical thing. Why don't we do it? If everybody is doing it, not everybody can be stupid. So why should we do it? Why should we stay behind? Why should we not do the same thing? And when we start following the crowd, when we start following everybody, we would start actually trading in our Īmān for this dunya. And we would do that because the value of dunya would become very much. But the reality of the matter is that this dunya is worthless. I quote you a hadith, because this hadith, if you again internalize this hadith, it really is it shakes you up completely. And it's a Sahih hadith in Bukhari Sharif or Muslim Sharif. It says that if the worth of this dunya was even worth than the tip of the wing of a mosquito, then Allah, if in the sight of Allah this dunya was even worth as the tip of the wing of a mosquito, Allah would not have given even a sip of water to unbelievers, disbelievers. If this dunya was of any value to Allah, and even as much as the value of the tip of the wing of a mosquito, Allah would have not even given a sip of water to the disbelievers. But here we are, that disbelievers have everything. Everything. I quoted an ayah, I don't know if it was in this discussion or some other discussion, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was saying that had it not been that everybody would have wanted to become a disbeliever, we would have given, we would have made the houses of the disbelievers, those who do not believe in Rahman, would have made them with silver, they would have given them clothing of gold, would have given them couches of silver and gold. Why? Because for Allah, this dunya has no meaning. You can have everything in this dunya and that would amount to nothing. Nothing. The reality is in akhirah. The reality is in the akhirah. This is where it really counts. This is where it really matters. This is where we would be really the test. This dunya is a test and we are being tested that who understands the purpose of this dunya. The purpose of this dunya. In Surah Kahf, we recite Surah Kahf so often, but we hardly reflect on this ayah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says that Inna ja'alna ma alal ardi zinatan laha. We have indeed made whatever is on an earth an adornment for it. So everything on this earth is an adornment for it. And there's a purpose that why it has been made like that. Linabluwahum, so that we may test ayyuhum ahsanu amala, that who is the one who comes with the best of the deeds. This dunya is here not so that we can come up with big bank balances, a lot of money, big houses, big cars, financial stability, all of that. This dunya is here so that we can show to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who has the best of the actions, and where is it going to be determined that whether this action is best or not is in akhirah. If we want to be saved from the fitna of Dajjāl, we have to bring ourselves to shift from dunya focus to akhirah focus. We have to realize that the success is not here, it is after the finishing line. And that finishing line is death. That's when the results will be announced. That's when we will know whether we are successful or not. There is a need and there is an objective. I'll give you a few examples to understand the difference. You're working in Amazon, and in this region you're going on Prime Day sale or White Friday sale, right? Now you know that that's the period because everything would be on sale. There would be many customers that would be coming in. Your bosses would come and tell you this is high season. We have to make sure that everything stays on the dot and their systems, nothing goes wrong. For those 3 days, because you know that you have to the maximum revenues, you would not worry about whether you have eaten, you have not eaten, whether you have slept, not slept. You would be more than happy to work that extra hours without worrying about your food, your sleep, so that you can meet those sales targets, which are the objective. Food and sleep was a need which you were more than happy to sacrifice to meet the objective, which was your sales target. As a student, exam days, a student works extra hours. He hardly cares about his sleep, about his food, because the objective is to get good grades. The need is sacrificed, objective is given higher priority. So there is an objective and there is a need. This dunya is our need. In this dunya, we have needs. Our objective is not this dunya. Our objective is akhirah. And when we have a choice to give priority to the needs versus the objective, just as a salesperson or a student would be more than happy to compromise on the needs, working towards the objective, we too need to compromise on the needs and work towards the objective. Anything that loses its focus on the objective that it has, a thing which is driven towards its objectives is called, has a purpose, and as long as you're fulfilling that purpose, you have a value. If you're no longer fulfilling your purpose, you are invaluable. I'll give you again a few examples just to make this thing you bring a light bulb, one of these bulbs that we put in the lamps and the chandeliers and whatever, and when you're bringing it, you make sure that before you have installed it, you've kept it in a safe place. Nobody should come and trample on it. Nobody should crush it. You ensure, because it's a very fragile thing, you're taking care of it. You install it, and then suddenly you realize that, actually it was defected. It is not working. Now the same bulb that you were so worried about and taking so many precautions and making sure that everybody else is also on guard and not doing anything to it, the same bulb, you just take it off and throw it in the dustbin. You're no longer caring whether the glass would break or not. Why? Because that bulb is not fulfilling its purpose. You have a cow at your place, and that cow is meant for giving milk, and you take care of it, you make sure that it has the best vaccinations and the best food and everything, because you want it to give a certain liter of milk every day. Comes a time that that cow is no longer able to give that milk. The next thing you would do, the same cow who you were spending so much on happily, you would be thinking, अब तो ये खर्चा बन गया, इसको काटो, चलो अगले महीने का गोश्त निकल आएगा. Right? It fails in its purpose. It's no longer fulfilling its purpose. It loses its value. The reason that the Ummah, the Muslimah these days is getting abused and beaten from everywhere is because we have lost our purpose. We have lost the purpose. And because we have lost the purpose, we are losing our value. When we had our purpose, just 313 of us could stand in front of an army, more than 1,000, by just having sticks in our hands. Because the purpose was there. And the help of Allah was there for them. I'm talking about the incident of Badr. And when we have lost our purpose, there are armies and armies and armies surrounding a very small, and we all know what is happening to all of us. We have lost the purpose. What is our purpose? Our purpose is لِنَبْلُوَهُمْ أَيُّهُمْ أَحْسَنُ عَمَلًا, to work on good actions, quality of our actions, which are pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And where would that quality be measured? To work towards akhirah. We need to have that in focus. Ups and downs in this dunya, they really do not matter. This dunya would go like this. There's a very beautiful thing saying in Urdu that kisi ke din kisi ki raat. Things, there's no thing that stays constant. The things for people for whom things stay constantly high, it's a very worrying state. It's a worrying state. For anyone whom you're seeing, ऐश लगी हुई है, never be happy with that. Because ऐश का मतलब यह है कि अल्लाह ने ढील दे दी है, and then suddenly he'll pull it and then he'll have nowhere to go. It's a place to be worried about. So ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for akhirah and afiyat in dunya. Ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow you to differentiate between haq and batil. Ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that never say कि Allah मुझे दुनिया नहीं चाहिए, because हम फकीर हैं, हमें हर चीज़ चाहिए, but दुनिया में वैसे ही रहना है जैसे किश्ती पानी में रहती है. Do you understand this concept? A boat will not function without water, right? It needs some kind of water surface to function properly. You bring it on the road, what would it do? Nothing. It has to be in the water to function. But it doesn't have to be underwater. It always has to stay above water. पानी के ऊपर रह के वो सैर सकती है, पानी उसके अंदर आ गया तो वो डूब जाती है. हमने भी रहना दुनिया में ही है, लेकिन दुनिया हमारे अंदर नहीं आनी चाहिए. दुनिया should not enter in us. जब दुनिया हमारे अंदर आ गई, we have lost the objective. We are now working towards the needs. That is something that, understand these three words: objective, need, purpose. Objective, need, purpose. And then ask for your needs in light of the objective that you have to fulfill. And ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow you to fulfill your purpose. Stay on course so that you remain valuable. These are the important things to ask for. I would have at this point in time said, okay, now I'll do the remaining points in the next session, but since this is the last session so I'll cover last point on this. in your mind, structure your du'as. You cannot say, or you cannot leave it, dua cannot be left to chance. कि जी मैं बैठूंगा तो मांग लूंगा. Just as we organize ourselves for everything else, we're all professionals over here, we organize ourselves, we mentally prepare ourselves, how we're going to present something, how we're going to, we're going and doing a sales pitch. We are very structured. We know that, when I have to ask for things and how I have to present the business case and how I have to make it look feasible and then pitch for what I need in back, right? Du'as you need to be prepared and mentally structuring your dua as well. We spoke about that there are moments, there are occasions when du'as are accepted. We spoke about that you are at times in a certain condition when the du'as are accepted. We spoke about that there are certain places when du'as are accepted, right? Maqamat hain aise jahan dua. So, and we also spoke about that a dua that is asked according to the moment and the occasion, मौके की मुनासबत से, वक्त और मौके की मुनासबत से की भी दुआ is more accepted. So then know in your mind how if you're going for Umrah or Hajj, just do not randomly go and बस वहाँ पे जो दिल में आया मांग लूँगा, या मेरे पास ये किताब है मैं इससे मांग लूँगा. Structure your du'as. You have 7 rounds. Easiest way to keep count of 7 rounds of tawaf or say is that in your mind say that in each round what du'as you're going to make, right? And then accordingly make du'as. So one suggestion that I give is that if you make 3 categories of du'as, that will help you a lot. One is masnoon du'as. Masnoon du'as are the ones that Rasulullah ﷺ said, for example, the dua for entering the house, dua for leaving the house, dua for waking up, dua for going to sleep, dua for eating, dua after eating, wearing clothes, taking off clothes, putting on shoes, taking off shoes, relieving yourself. All of these du'as, they are masnoon du'as and they can be said and they all need to be said once you're doing a particular action. Dua for getting on a ride, dua for starting a journey, they're all du'as. And they help you stay connected with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we should all make an effort, at least, list down 10 things that you do every day, multiple times. I just listed them for you, right? Put in an effort to learn the dua for all of them. Waking up, going to sleep, going to bathroom, coming back from bathroom, so on and so forth. Charge. So, those du'as will, inshallah, keep you connected with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So those masnoon du'as, said at the right time, with the right action, they will get you into habit of making du'as. And again, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives you the opportunity to make these du'as consistently, there's a very positive sign that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants you to make du'as, right? Then there are certain short du'as, which I say that they are the du'as that should be, on the occasions that are there. For example, if you're driving and it starts raining, or you've just finished your salah, after salah you can make dua, or du'as, you're sitting in a Jummah khutbah and now one of the qabuliyat of time for the qabuliyat of dua is that when the imam sits between the Jummah khutbah. So I call these pet du'as. Have these pet du'as that that I can make quickly, and and this is in the shortest moment of time between iqama and takbir ula. This is a quick time to say dua. So short du'as that you can make, you don't have to sit extensively long for, but after namaz, 2 minutes, dua. And what can these du'as be for? These can be du'as for khair and afiyah, these can be du'as for sehat, that can be dua for khatma bil Īmān, for akhirah, right? And again, if you're starting the day, ask at the start of the day that, Ya Allah, I ask for barakat in this day, for rahmat in this day. If you're ending the day, you can ask for after Isha that, Ya Allah, I seek your forgiveness for anything wrong that I did in this day. So, quick short du'as, have in your mind that on these occasions, these are the du'as. And they are, again, the Sunnah of Rasulullah is full of these beautiful du'as. If you can learn them with their meaning, that's the best. If you say, as Rasulullah has said them, the probability of them accepted is higher. But if you can't learn the Arabic of it, at least know the meaning of it. And say the same to the same effect. Use the same wordings to the same effect. And then there are long du'as. And these are the du'as that you make, when you are wanting to have your one-to-one time with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the time of the Hajjud, the time after Jummah Salah, the time after you have done your Umrah, or you're sitting at Maqam Ibrahim and you've just done your Nafil, or you're drinking Zamzam, or after Say, or any of those occasions which are where you're not rushed, and and they are the time for making dua. So then that is the time for making long duas. And even in those long duas, if you structure yourself, it really helps you cover all the areas that you would want for. For example, when you're making dua, by the way, you will observe, what is the learning ground for us? The learning ground for us is how Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam made the duas, right? So you would realize from his duas that the starting point is always one's own self. Start with yourself and start with seeking forgiveness for yourself. And there's a great hikmah in that. Because if you start with seeking forgiveness for yourself and Allah has now forgiven you, then as soon as a person is forgiven, he also becomes the one whose du'as are accepted. So start by seeking forgiveness for yourself. Do tawbah to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Seek His forgiveness, His maghfirat. And after that, the first thing that we should ask for is for the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. कहते हैं लेस हो जाना, कहता है आपको अभी अल्लाह ने उंगली पकड़ाई, आप हाथ पकड़ मांगना शुरू कर दें. Go for it. अल्लाह से अल्लाह की मोहब्बत मांगे, अल्लाह की रज़ा मांगे, अल्लाह के कुर्ब मांगे. Right? Ask for those things. And then, if we understand how the dynamics of our deen, that the love of Allah does not really work without, if there is no love for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So to give stability to your love for Allah, ask for the love of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That's a very important love to ask for. And then once you're done with this, then move on, ask for khair for yourself, khair for your families, khair for your children, ask for barakah, ask for rahmat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then move on, widen the circle, bring in your parents, your siblings, widen the circle, bring in your teachers, your mashayikh, your family members, widen the circle, and then ask for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for Īmān, for ilm. Ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for acceptance in the path of deen. Khidmat ke liye kabul farma lein, deen ki khidmat ke liye kabul farma lein. Whatever way Allah thinks is good for us, get into that. Ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for rizq. Ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for izzat. Ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for Īmān. Because one thing that we really, really need to be worried about in the times that we are living in is our Īmān. Rasulullah had said that a person would wake up in the state of Īmān and he would go to sleep and his Īmān would not be there with him. It's not because he would have said that I am now a kafir, na'uzubillah. He would have not outrightly disclaimed to be a Muslim. It would be because he would have done something which is against our fundamentals of our belief, or which would be what is called shirk khafi, where he would have assigned the powers, or he would have made somebody else equal in powers to Allah than with Allah. And this is happening all around us. As we are forced into the systems of this dunya, we are willing to make compromises on these things. There is no way that we would have, 100 years back, anybody would have allowed us to trade in interest. The banking system is now such that the ulama are forced to give permissions and give fatwas that yes, if you have no other means, then you can take a mortgage which is un-Islamic. Yeah, if you're living in a Western country and you have no means of getting an Islamic loan and you have to have a house for yourself, there is an exception that the muftiyan give. It's not a blanket one. You have to still make a consultation. Don't take my word for it and go and start taking mortgaged un-Islamic loans. But there is a compromise that is being made. Why so? Because this is how the system is sucking us in. We are moving towards digital economy. Digital economy, what God knows what would we do. We have seen in COVID days that if you are a non-vaccinated person, you can easily become a second-grade citizen. You would not be allowed to go into shops. You would not be allowed to go and enter the malls. You would not be allowed to do this and that. Which means that your entire lifestyle can be controlled if you're not agreeing to a certain thing. And if at later stage, if that thing is something which is against the principles of Islam, how would you stop yourself? Right? So ask for your Īmān, ask for your Īmān to be saved. Make a lot of dua for that. And then It's not just that you make dua for yourself and forget about leave it there. More than us, we should be afraid for our children who have to go through far worse than us. Allah knows who's going to live longer, but if they are to outlast us, the times that they will be facing would be even more worrying. Make dua for them, for their Īmān. Make dua for the whole generations, because that's an investment. Again, if we are to invest in something, invest in our kids. They are the best investment, because any good that they do is a direct multiplier for us. Where? In akhirah. In akhirah. And then in the end, make dua for what would happen to us post our departure from this dunya, in our qabr, on the day of Hashr, on the day of when they would be questioning, and when we would be in desperate need of the shafaat of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So ask for all those things, and then ask for Allah, for His raza, and ask Allah that, Ya Allah, give me a place in Jannatul Firdaus. That should be my ultimate abode. So make that long dua, but structure it in your mind. Structure it on the lines that I've just spoken about. If you have noticed that this is the dua that I make after our session, this is the flow that I usually use as well. It helps because it lets me know that what are the areas that I want to cover. I never put the same words in my mouth. Jis waqt Allah Ta'ala jo dil se nikal rahe ho, wo Allah ki marzi. But at least one general flow should be there. You should be knowing that what is it that I want to ask. Right? So that's all that I wanted to cover for du'as. There's much more to it, this topic, but if Allah Ta'ala give us a chance, we'll talk more about it. But more importantly, whatever we have talked about, may Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala give us the tawfiq to apply this into our lives, bring it into our lives, and make it a part of our lives. Wa akhiru da'wana anil hamdulillahi rabbil alameen.